Okay, I'm recording and I am going to share my screen. Can you see this? Sweet.
I can see it as well.
Thank you. Okay,
Visible.
so I have a game called Bloxel. I've been working on this for quite a while, and I put this presentation together yesterday. I was originally thinking of doing something very low stakes, just like coming in with basically nothing and just chatting. But as I was looking over the history of everything, I realized it's actually kind of interesting, in my opinion, how this project has evolved and my personal experience going through it to some extent. So I got a little carried away and made some slides. I hope they are entertaining for you. So, also, please interrupt me and ask for more detail about anything at any point. That is my desire for this talk. All right. 2017. Actually, wait a second. Is this right? Or was it 2016? I guess it's not that important. I'm in San Mateo as a Roblox intern. I live with Luke for the summer, and also Chad, the creator. Chad.
Hell yeah.
Great time. Chad was really into Minecraft. And at one point in my life, so was I. So Chad and I would talk a lot about games, and Minecraft came up a lot. And he asked, like, why hasn't anybody made a voxel game in Roblox yet? Like, could you make Minecraft in Roblox? And I was like, that's a good question. Also, I guess probably because it would be technically challenging. And at this point, I thought Roblox developers were relatively not sophisticated. Like, the only technically interesting games that I knew of on the platform at the time were maybe like Phantom Forces and possibly Meep City or Apocalypse Rising with some LOD technology. But this was very much the early days. I mean, this wasn't the early days of Roblox, but basically I had been away from Roblox for a long time, and I kind of wanted to come back and make a game. And this idea for building a Minecraft in Roblox seemed interesting because the landscape on Roblox did not seem very technical at the time. So I thought it would be cool to make a game that stood out for being technical, and also possibly I could make something successful because it would be hard for other people to compete. So, end of that internship, I come back to Maryland and I've been brewing on this idea. I took a bunch of notes in my sketchbook for the game, and here are some very early ideas. Actually, physics was a huge component in the original idea for Bloxel. Like, I have a bunch of ideas for a fan that can like exert a force, a fan block. balloons, and how you could create assemblies out of blocks and attach physical actors on them, like make a fan to power a submarine that propels you through water, or make like a hovercraft with fans on the bottom. And here are some just particularly kind of crazy ideas that I found. A sustainable island raft, where like you make an island out of blocks and put dirt and crops on it, just like you would find on land, and you kind of just go out to sea. Another one was this death from above idea, where you make a plane and lure some zombies into a chamber in the plane and fly it over your enemy's base, and then pull a lever to release a hatch which drops the zombies on your enemies. We didn't get to physics yet in real Bloxel. Maybe someday it'll happen. It is still kind of a vision goal. But we start with anchored blocks. So I'm in my senior year of college at this point. I'm doing a bunch of classes in math and geometry. In my free time during this semester, I whiteboard a bunch of ideas for how to design the engine for Bloxel, because it's a technical challenge for me. I had never really made such a large, complicated system that had to load and unload and replicate stuff. So a lot of my time was spent drawing this system up on a whiteboard in my apartment on the floor. And just to emphasize how much of my life I spent doing this, I have included quite a few pictures of, I don't know, whenever I would draw stuff on the whiteboard, sometimes I'd take a picture because I had to erase it. And I have a bunch of these in my phone from way back in the day. But really, I think there was a period of time, there's a month during my winter break where I spent all 25 days of the University of Maryland break in my apartment alone, because my roommate had gone home, just staring at this whiteboard on the floor on that carpet, figuring out the engine and shipping features. I remember this time very fondly. It was a time of extreme focus, which was kind of uncomfortable, but also nostalgic. So, probably around end of that winter break, I have a basic thing working. This is actually some terrain generated with very simple purlin noise for the hills. And excuse me, sorry about that. 3D purlin noise for the caves. And a couple of trees, which were just placed, like there's 8 of them, every 8 chunks. They kind of just get randomly placed. Pretty simple stuff. I made some art for the game myself. I waded a little bit into Blender, actually making something real for the first time. That was pretty fun. Here's a testing of this log I made. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I interned in 2016, so the original slide is messed up. So the year, it's like maybe 6 months after I started implementing the thing, I had the first world working. And I was working on it on and off because I was doing school and all that. The first world had procedural terrain. It had 8 block types, including a lantern and some cobblestone. And things persisted in the world. So there's one persistent world that you join. Whenever you join Bloxel, it loads the world from data stores. So yeah, once I got that working, I was playing around with it, and I met the first couple players that were actually really into it. They joined me in game, and they made this area around the spawn, and they made a welcome sign that is misspelled. I think I don't, like, the dude started making it, and then actually, so the dude, I remember him, DJ Lukey Boy was his username. He showed the game to his friend, and it was me, him, and the friend all building around the spawn to make it look cool at the same time. And Lukey made this welcome sign, and then his friend, he was like, "Hey guys, check this out, check out this sign I made." And then his friend came over, he was like, dude, it's misspelled." And then he was like, "No, it's not. No, it's not. Look." He's like, "No, I'm really sure it's misspelled." And he's like, "No." So, yes, this was a very cool moment for me, because this was the first time since 2009 or 2010 where I had made a video game and distributed it to someone else over the internet, and saw great joy in their experience of it. Eventually, I moved the game from my profile to a group, and unfortunately that meant I had to wipe the world because it was in data stores. But the benefit of the group was huge, because people started posting on the wall. Somebody made a Discord server around the game, which was awesome. I wasn't even on Discord at the time, but somebody went and made it. The first cool creation was probably the stupidly long highway that this one person made, Brax 001. He made this stupidly long highway, and everyone loved it, and they were just so taken by his commitment, and they were just impressed. So this, I think, really kicked off a culture of a bunch of people in the Discord community making crazy creations and sharing them. I added signposts. This was an interesting feature where I wanted to support custom messages, but at first I didn't implement that. I just, because it was complicated, so I just made it right. Your name was here. And this led to some interesting behavior. A bunch of people would like sign their builds, and actually a bunch of people would just spam signposts everywhere. Here is a funny instance where I made a signpost in Studio to test, and it says player 1 was here, and this person thought this artifact was so important that he built a case around it to preserve it. Yes.
That's so beautiful. He's like an archaeologist for Bloxel.
Yes, yes.
If you remove the sign from Studio, that's removing the sign from the game.
I know. I didn't remove it. It's probably still there.
So the sign is just in Workspace in the Studio file?
Oh, no. Like, I placed the actual thing. So I placed it in Studio, and it wrote to the data store. And it is in the game. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So just a few questions now that we've been talking about how the game has evolved from its early days. Just what are your, or what was your biggest challenges, and also what are your current ongoing challenges for this? And just before you answer that, there are a lot of different ways that you could think of this. For example, just the data loading or jump loading. You could think about user behavior, user being nice and what they're building. Do you need moderation in some kind of sense? And also just other areas of features that you want to have.
Yeah. There's challenges on all fronts, from encouraging good behavior. Griefing was a big problem. I might have a slide about that. Let me see, actually, if there is one. No, I think I got rid of it. But design problems, technical problems, some community problems. I guess, I mean, like moderation problems. I had one slide in here that was kind of, I guess I removed it, of like a giant swastika somebody built near the spawn, and it's just like covered in signposts from everyone. The whole spawn is really got signposts everywhere because you have an infinite number of them, and it's very easy to place them. You just right click. So people would just, like, you walk, the spawn was a small protected area where only a few players had permission. If you'd walk outside of that, then it was just pure chaos. So actually,
Yeah, so
I have a few slides later that talk a little bit about that. So maybe I can get to it.
okay, yeah. Also just about what you're doing to, say, address some of these more complicated problems. That'd be interesting to hear.
Okay, yes. If you don't mind, let me talk about that later, because it will probably come up naturally.
All fine.
All right. So the community is growing. A lot of people are passionate about building, and they share pictures of their stuff in the Discord. This is the first town that emerged, I think, where Brax, the same dude who started the highway, he kind of wanted to build something with everybody else, so they, like, he invited and led people. I'm not even sure if he necessarily led it or if everyone was just so passionate that they all really wanted to build something together. But they designed this town and they built it together. And I remember visiting this place while the building was in progress. And it was interesting to see people having different roles. Like some people would plan out the building and like build the foundation for these buildings, and then other people would kind of take that template and fill it out with blocks, kind of doing the monotonous labor of actually placing the thing, and other people did the design. That was pretty cool. Andreas, one big problem that has been recurring throughout the entire history of Bloxel is still, I think I recently resolved it mostly, but was data loss and data corruption. When they were building this building here and I came to visit, I think I shut down the server because there was an update, and doing that caused maybe an hour of progress that they had been working on to just not save. And there are many instances of things kind of reverting and disappearing, and this was very hard for me to deal with because I don't know, it's stressful because I wanted to make this game reliable and something that people enjoy, but their very precious creations were kind of being, on rare occasion, just vanishing before their eyes for no reason, which sucked. But people tolerated it, I guess, and forgave me. And a challenge, I think the reason why this was happening was the system was very complicated, I think a little overly complicated. So there were some bugs. This is a cool build that somebody made. It's Squidward's house as far as I can tell. So one day I came in and saw that this is the protected area near the spawn. Right where the wall is where everyone starts having permission to build. I came in and saw like a ton of people in the server, all the people from the community were in here collaborating to build this giant box to enclose the protected area of the spawn. So they built right outside of the protected area to, I don't know, make this cool like building thing. And the east is, this is the highway that Brax built. So it starts here and goes for thousands of meters.
Was the highway built before the restrictions? Is that why it's there? Like, how is the highway built if it's inside the spawn?
I don't remember the order that this happened, but some players, actually just one player, built a nice area around the spawn before I added the permissions, and I liked that. So I added the permissions and gave that one player who built this little area here, the inside of the wall, I gave him permission to continue modifying it. I think I might have, whatever. Yes.
So about ownership and such,
Mm-hmm.
to which degree did you find that you needed ownership of certain parts of your world, or how worlds are just connected to one another? And in this game, again, I haven't played before, so and just say, so if you added ownership of certain areas and such, what would happen, for example, if people left the game or didn't stop playing anymore?
I never got this far. Right now, the world is total anarchy except for the spawn, which was necessary because people destroyed the spawn and made it impossible to play. I think I learned this the hard way in the previous world, where the spawn kind of just decayed into chaos. It's currently anarchy. I think there's a couple ways you could handle this, like maybe make players pay to upkeep their property, or something. Like, this is something Josh probably has experience with, but I haven't gotten that far yet. So I continued to kind of make some optimizations to the game. The average player can't see this far, but I added kind of a debug feature for myself to increase the draw distance. It looks kind of cool. This is the spawn, actually, far off in the distance there. You can kind of see there's that, you can kind of make out the cube that people built, but the area right around that is just pure chaos because people have infinite blocks. They just build spires, place thousands of signposts. This is a neat thing somebody made, which actually, unfortunately, I never got to visit because of data issues, which kind of wiped out the middle of the tower. So this build has been lost, unfortunately, due to data corruption. But it looked pretty freaking awesome. The Secret Advanced Society. So this guy, the Poke Monkey, he was the guy from before who shared that shrine for the Player One signpost. He seems like very obsessed with finding all the secrets of the game, exploiting. Like, he created a secondary Discord server where he only invited the other, like, super hardcore people from the community, where he'd post about, like, he'd scan the I don't even know how often he did this, but like he'd scan replicated storage and the scripts and always find these blocks that I was just testing with and never even released. And he, I think, is a key player in the community because, I don't know, he's just extremely passionate about this game. He even made a t-shirt in real life with the Bloxel logo on it, which was very touching. But he's like crazy hardcore. Does this work?
That's some really cool community engagement. Like, you're able to get such a hardcore community that people are making t-shirts about your game. That's really cool.
And the whole time, this game has like 0 concurrent players on average. It's never been at a point where you look at the game page and you see more than, on average, 0 players.
You probably have, I mean, this game probably has the highest like engagement per capita.
Quite possibly. So this, I don't know why this isn't working, but yeah, it won't load. But he made a clip of himself doing some experiments on this block, which is an unknown ID. Like, it's this my script, whenever it encounters an ID for a voxel that it doesn't know of for whatever reason that's been saved to the data store, it will spawn just a black part. And I have no idea how this came into existence, but they found one. They somehow got one. And they did so many experiments on it. Like, I think this guy accidentally dug it and put it in his inventory. And like, he was digging a normal block, and then this showed up in his inventory for some reason. He placed it, and then for a long period of time, they were like, he put it in a museum, and they were afraid to dig it again because they didn't know if that would destroy it. But he finally like recorded himself destroying it, and it showed up in his inventory. And then they learned, and they were like doing all this science on this thing. And they also figured out how to dupe. Like, I think the way you do it is you create two accounts, you have one account block the other account, and then both of them join the game. It creates two servers, and since the game is not that big, I didn't handle this case. So it'll create two servers, and it's just one persistent world. So you can go to a chunk, place something down in that chunk in one server, and then have your other guy on the other server walk to that chunk, load the block, and then it's loaded for both of you, and you can both dig it, and it goes into both of your inventories, and then you can leave the game, and that's how you dupe. So they like started a whole economy around this unknown block where they would like trade it with each other, and it was a symbol of status who had the most quantity of it.
Concurrency is something that is also one of my wonders. It's kind of a thing that you have, a world that needs to be persistent. But if it needs to be persistent, then you probably just want one of it. And how do you then deal with that? So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was originally thinking that there might be multiple parallel worlds for Bloxel, like Minecraft. You create your own world, and then there's like a server list. But I never got that far, and also I kind of have grown to really like the fact that there's only one persistent world that everyone is in, because it's more community oriented, I think. That guy, the Pokemonkey, kind of he made a timeline of the history of Bloxel. This is kind of pixelated.
This is crazy.
This is kind of pixelated for me. I can't really read the fine print, but the big eras are the Age of Chaos, where I guess like this is early in. Oh yeah, okay, 2016. So yes, I entered in 2016. Got the idea. 2017. Dang, I messed up my slides. Oh well, whatever. At least we have his reference, which is probably more correct. So, Age of Chaos, the world is starting out. It's the first world. Age of Infrastructure, this is probably referring to a period where everyone was building all this crazy stuff. They were building the highways. They were building all these towns. They built multiple towns, which was really awesome. Then the Age of Knowledge. This is probably referring to that period of time where they were doing all these crazy science experiments and learning about like the really niche, crazy edge cases and bugs in the game. And then the Age of Inactivity. This is when people dropped off a little bit. and the game was not super active. Excuse me. And I also wasn't really updating it that much throughout most of this. So, like, the game has really not changed that much. People have been starved for updates. Here's another cool build someone made during the Age of Inactivity.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, like, do you feel like this is a game where you would want to continue to like release updates and that's what players are after, or is it like desired state? It's like you have a base of a game and the users are able to like spawn. I don't know. They're able to create their own engagement from like the base tools that you give.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely was aiming for this game to reach a sustainable state where players create the content and they create builds and they share the builds and it becomes its own system that just runs away.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got to that point. During the Age of Infrastructure, it was pretty cool. That was kind of going. Like, people were building a lot of stuff, and I wasn't intervening very much at all. But then I ran into problems, I guess because the game was growing, and there were more griefers. So people who wanted to make builds that would last had to build them farther away from the spawn point. And that made them harder to discover and harder to share because you have to walk all the way there. It also made it so that the people who built really far from the spawn they couldn't really visit any other players because teleportation is not a thing in this game. You can reset to go back to the origin, but other than that, you just have to walk everywhere and your location saves between sessions. So people would walk really far out, make a build where no one would touch it, and then they'd kind of be stuck there because if they left, then they'd have to spend 30 minutes again walking all the way back out there, or they'd lose the location of their creation.
So with this approach where you actually have the physical element to it, you need to travel to a certain location to be able to get to your build, and that the issues that you mentioned now, how do you have any regret for that compared to another theoretical situation where you might have a few worlds in different servers, so to speak, in your game, that you possibly have a UI list that you can select from, and where you possibly ordered by the latest activity that was in that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it depends. Like, I'm not sure what I want more. So people requested a set home feature so that they could teleport, so they could like set a home and then teleport there whenever they wanted, which would somewhat solve this problem. But I kind of liked the the coherence of the physical world where you have to walk everywhere, even though it's inconvenient. I wanted to make some kind of, I don't know, I think teleporting or having parallel worlds where everyone can make their own world, it might have been better for the game's success in terms of getting players, but it would have compromised on the vision. And I don't really know which I should have gone with, but I kind of wanted to not compromise the vision, I guess, because also I have another job that makes money, so I wasn't necessarily trying to make the game successful. I kind of switched gears at one point in that I wanted to make it primarily more of an interesting art project. But I don't know. I think if I wanted to make it successful, I would consider that. Museum. Somebody built this. A new guy joined during the age of inactivity and built he built some pretty insane builds. Another town.
Another quick question about the last slide.
Mhm.
So, like, did they have to mine all the sand, or do they have like infinite sand in there?
So in this world, everything or most blocks are infinite.
Okay.
Sand, I think was infinite.
How do you, when you say this world, like, do you have different versions where like you went back and forth?
Yeah.
Setting?
Yeah. Well, I will get to that. Like,
Okay.
there've been a couple world resets. This world was alive for like 2 to 3 years.
That's pretty cool.
And this is towards the end of the life of this world, kind of close to the time where I reset it. This is what the spawn looked like. The spawn is actually not centered here. Spawn is right over to the left. But the chaos grew and grew. And you could see like the chaos decreases the further away from the spawn you get. So there's actually a pretty cool town over there in the bottom right that you can kind of see. And that was generally the pattern that emerged. Like, you could walk along a highway and the chaos would gradually decrease, and you would find some pretty interesting builds pretty much on the side of any highway, because only the players dedicated enough to go on that highway would build there. So they weren't griefed as much, but it happened sometimes.
Did it follow normal distribution?
In theory, probably so.
Yeah, just a funny question. Yeah.
So I did eventually reset this world because I shipped a huge overhaul, which is the LOD system, which I'm about to talk about. But we had a little closing party for the old world. At the spawn, somebody built a little cove where a bunch of the people placed signposts. Another thing about the signposts, when I did change them to support custom messages, so you could type anything, but they requested, they missed the fact that the old name signatures were guaranteed to be authentic. So I added a feature where if you type out that phrase, your username was here, it would add a little black square in the bottom right of the signpost as a signature.
That's a really cool feature, because like that's like actual permanence. Like, I think a lot of people, what's cool about this game is that like you can just you leave a lasting mark in some world.
Yeah.
And that's like an authenticated message.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's, I don't know. I feel like that kind of blew my mind. That's cool. That's so cool.
Another thing, I guess, small detail, these black and white signposts. I don't remember why I added these, but I added the ability to donate to the game. And if you donate, then you get a signpost in your inventory that says, "Thank you, your username, for supporting Bloxel's development." And I think the black one you get if you donate a lot. I don't remember the number. It's like 500 Robux or something. And the white one is less, like 50 Robux or something. And I was testing I was testing this feature actually and I placed a signpost, and it said, "Thank you, Boyer." Oh, an interesting feature. So if you dig somebody else's signpost, you get that signpost with their name on it. So you can place it with their name wherever you want. And I placed one while testing, and the Pokemonkey, of course, like, stole it and kept it because it's like an artifact, a rare Boyer the Destroyer donation signpost. And I think he duped it to hell. Anyways. The present. For a long time, a problem in Bloxel is that you can't see very far. So it's difficult to discover other people's builds. You can't really see a city in the distance. People wanted like waypoints and the ability to save coordinates so that they could keep track of their builds. I thought it would be a lot cooler to do a really ambitious idea of just being able to see the entire world at once from very far away. So I sat on this idea for a while, and during winter break at the beginning of this year, I drove back to Maryland and spent a couple weeks staying with my grandpa on vacation before work resumed, and I used this time to implement the ideas that I had been sitting on for a long time. Finding the time to work on this interspliced with my career has been a big challenge. But I find these slices of time where I can fit in big things that require focus. So I'm starting to prototype the system. Here you can see different LOD chunks. It's not really coherent, it's an early prototype, but very close. The blocks are 3x3 studs, and then slightly farther away they are 6x6 studs, and then 12x12. So there are these cascades where every such distance the size of the blocks doubles. So you can see very, very far, but the resolution is lower. I will talk a little more about the implementation in a bit, but a very cool feature of this is that it works with player buildings. So in the prototype world, somebody built, actually Brax, the guy who built the original highway, he built this really big tower, and you can kind of see how it's still visible from a distance, but at a lower resolution. You can see it really far away. Like in the bottom right, I'm 518 meters away. Actually, no, I'm even further than that, because that distance is to my character's body, I think, or something. I don't know. You can see stuff from really far away. It was a big journey to actually ship this thing, because I kind of knew that I would have to reset the world to use the new technology, and I would be stuck with the new terrain for a long time. Like, this would be my only opportunity to redo the terrain, and I really wanted the terrain to flex the new technology. So I had to go from simple hills. I mean, this is kind of cool, but I really wanted gigantic mountains, which you can see here. So I redid the terrain generator. I added some new foliage for different biomes. And I had very ambitious goals for the new terrain generator, but I really had to cut scope and really only add basically 3 biomes, very dry areas with cactus, dry-ish and cold areas with pine trees, and humid areas with oak trees. There was a good amount of optimization that I needed to do in order to get the new engine workable, because it was very ambitious. I started doing this pretty standard voxel game optimization where you greedily combine voxels that are the same when you're placing them if they're next to each other, which is in the bottom right, and that helped a lot. I think it reduced the part count to like 1/6 of what it was previously, or some ridiculous huge gain. Also, there was a funny moment where the game was taking 10 gigabytes and it was crashing on my laptop. It turns out the very far away voxels, when they go into the physics data structures, I guess, they take up memory proportional to their size. So I ended up replacing the faraway blocks with just a small 1x1x1 part with a very large block mesh, which helped that. And I finally addressed data corruption, which cropped up again when I tried to ship this. So I tried to ship this prototype, and for a day people built cool stuff, but then we came back the next day and saw that stuff was disappearing yet again. So I invested a lot in some tooling, like I made a remote server on DigitalOcean to collect logs from the game and get so I could step through and see what exactly was happening and really help debug and just make absolutely sure that the system was stable and reliable, avoiding all kinds of data corruption problems that happened in the past. And eventually it shipped. This is a screenshot from the new spawn location of the map, which is live now. There's a gigantic ocean. You're kind of spawning on a continent. Somebody took this screenshot. Here you can kind of see a debug visualization of the different LODs. So the red cubes are the highest detail, and you can see those are the individual voxels you can dig. And then one level out from that is the orange, which is half the resolution. And then there's the pink, which is half the resolution of that, and so on. And there's many levels, which is how I got the super long draw distance.
And is this in 3 dimensions as well?
Yes. So that you can dig infinitely deep and build infinitely high, subject to floating point. Each chunk contains 16 by 16 by 16 voxels. Regardless of the LOD. So if you have a character who's sitting in this location, the system will split. It'll start with these high, very large chunks with very coarse detail, and it will recursively refine them by splitting them based on their distance to you. so the chunks that are near you have the most amount of detail, the highest resolution. But in each of these squares, there's 16 by 16 by 16 blocks.
Is this memory or is this rendering?
This is so on the server, this is just Lua tables. It's funny, like if you edit Bloxel, you will see nothing in the workspace, just a skybox. And it's all in scripts, and nothing is ever instantiated on the server. It's all loaded from data stores into Lua tables, and there's a table for each of these chunks containing an array, one-dimensional array of all of the voxels in that chunk. And then that array gets passed to the client through a remote event, and the client instantiates all of the parts locally.
So
So I guess what more to build on the last question is like, so it's all on the client. That's really cool. So like the server has nothing, but then like on the client, does the client have more memory than what they're rendering? And is this like only the rendering, or?
Well, on the client, when it receives this remote event, it creates the parts for this, inserts them into a model, inserts the model into the workspace, and then releases the table from memory, just throws it away. So the client loads this stuff, and then the source of truth on the client is just the instances in the workspace. So it's just parts on the
Gotcha.
client.
yeah. So what you said before was that one of those chunks had 16 by 16 blocks in them. Does that also count for? That also counts for the higher, say, lower resolution chunks.
Yes.
Right. So if it's basically what you have is that you have, say, 3, 4, 5 different resolutions of the same area, or how do you try to do that?
Yes. So there, for this chunk, can you guys see my mouse?
Yes.
For say like this area, there, if people have built here, then in the data store there will be an entry for this chunk and its data, this chunk and its data, this chunk, and also in the data store you will find an entry for these 16 by 16 by 16 blocks, and also an entry for these 16 cubed.
Okay.
When a player places a block in the highest resolution chunk, the system will go one level up and go into this chunk and compute a new voxel at that position based on the 8 child voxels in this chunk. So if you put down a stone block, if you put a couple stone blocks down that are all close to each other, when you place a stone block, it'll go up one level. It'll look at the children, the 8 children, take the most common block out of the 8 children, and unless the children are all air, it will instantiate that most common child block in the higher level chunk.
Okay.
So if you place stone, then it propagates here, and then if there are 2 or more children, actually, it will keep propagating up as long as there are 2 solid blocks in the child. This is a...
Right.
Yep.
So what you could think of this of is that below the, say, the red small chunks, you actually have chunks in quotation marks, which are simply just 1 block each, which are then propagated up again. And for every time that you have at least 2 chunks within the larger chunk, then you can propagate up.
So like, how do they put this? Each voxel in a chunk has an ID, which can be dirt, grass, air. If I placed this piece of grass right here, then the system would listen for that change and look at these 4, actually, sorry, because it's it kind of overlays the parent right on top of the child. So like, this is one voxel of the parent, this is another voxel of the parent. So it would look at these 4 values in the child and then just set that one entire voxel of the parent to be grass. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And with the, say, LOD system, and also just your other performance update in terms of, say, reducing the number of blocks per cell or chunk, whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. How does that work together?
Well, this is all happening on the server. The server keeps a full array of, it keeps all of the data in an array, not compressed at all. The merging only happens on the client for parts. Yeah, so it's just like a post-process optimization kind of.
Yeah. Cool.
Here's the spawn continent of the new world. Somebody took this screenshot using hacks. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And the Pokemonkey built a sea bridge to another continent, which you can see from the spawn here. I think he built it out of just like grass, because in the new world, there are no more infinite blocks. You have to dig everything that you use to build. So I don't know how he did this. I guess he's like he farmed a bunch of blocks and then built this stupid long bridge. And this is like 8 to 16, maybe 20 kilometers out, which is ridiculous. It took, I think, like 2 hours to walk from the spawn across that bridge to another continent. He posted this screenshot. I don't even know what to say about this. This is just ridiculous. Yes, very cool. I think he did this while he was on spring break. So this is how he spent his spring break, building this gigantic sea bridge. Somebody else built this big pyramid thingy, which is actually visible from the spawn. It's that big 2 white blocks over there. which is kind of cool. I was playing with Trey, and he built a bridge between two mountain peaks, and we built this neat thing in the middle of the bridge between the peaks. And somebody built a cool little lighthouse. The new world is not as active as the old, I think, possibly because the blocks are finite, which is an interesting trade-off. The finite blocks solves a little bit of spam because people don't build spires because it's not as easy, but it also makes it harder to build creations. So that's kind of where we're at today. The game is not super active right now. I don't know if anybody is building anything. I think maybe we get a new build once every 2 weeks at this point. And now that I've shipped this update, I am not planning on touching the game very much more in the near future. I need a break, and yeah. So this is kind of the indefinite state for Bloxel now. I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm not sure what comes next for it. Maybe we'll just let it sit for a couple months and see if people build more cool stuff.
Interesting. So a couple of questions actually. I can think just the first of it. So
Yeah.
would be just say the near future. You're saying that you're not sort of working on it, but have you considered getting say someone who can fill in instead?
Yeah.
Just to try give some more feel to it.
The Pokemonkey has offered many times because he really wants updates and I don't make them. I've thought about this. I think it's just too hard because of how complicated the system is. But maybe it's possible if I find somebody really good.
Yeah, so just from my own experience and seeing some other large game communities, that a lot of developers don't really actively seek out new help if they're not actively trying to do that. So I have also seen other examples where they're super talented people, but simply just because it doesn't align in with vision and so on and so forth, they haven't been, say, gotten onto the team or the development team of the game that they so spent hundreds of hours trying to make something really fabulous about.
Yeah. And it also, I don't have time to manage it, I feel.
Yeah.
Which is hard. We'll see.
So another question, I'll just close through them.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most interesting block types? Now you talked about dirt and grass, but have you, say, gotten anything close to redstone or some other, say, more technical advanced stuff?
No, I haven't. I guess the most interesting block types are probably lava, which kills you. Signposts, which, you know, are interesting. That's pretty much it. There's also the campfire, which, you know, will lightly burn you and emit light, and it also emits sound, which is kind of neat. So you can build a cute little thing. But I haven't gotten to interactable stuff yet because I wanted to build out the core technology before going too crazy with features. because it's harder it slows down the new system development to support all that stuff.
Super. And then you were at the end talking a bit about the current situation of the game, that you have now made a limited or finite set of blocks that people can have. So that means that you have reduced or confined player abilities. In that sense, have you thought about some trade-off for that, or some new features, say tasks, daily tasks that people can use to get blocks faster?
Yeah, I have thought about this. I've thought about like buying block packs is the obvious solution to trade Robux for time. I don't have the development bandwidth to do anything more complicated than that, I feel.
Right.
But also, I don't know, I feel like it's okay to let this sit for a while in this state, and maybe it will be very inactive for that reason, because it's just too hard to collect resources. But that's okay with me, I think.
Yeah, it seems like this UDC-driven concept is at least going to have a lot of potential for people to spend a lot of time on. But again, if players don't feel that they're being rewarded for their time, then it'll end out, as you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else.
Cool.
I've got a question. So you talked here at the end that like it's now on this like you mine it, you place it system.
Yeah.
And it's limiting kind of like the creative output.
Yes.
Do you feel like that may have also led to less engagement, or do you think it may have led to more engagement, or it's just like unrelated?
I think that the game has an onboarding problem. And removing infinite block types from your inventory when you join exacerbated this problem, because now people join at the spawn and all they see around them is dirt and grass, and they can dig it, but you can't really build that much interesting stuff with that. All of the trees near the spawn have been stripped, and I don't yet have tree respawning or growing saplings. So it's hard to say, even if I could solve that by like, I don't know, giving new players some finite amount of blocks, or like letting them spawn farther out and where they can farm or something. I think it is still limiting to people's throughput. A lot of the people who used to build a lot of cool stuff, they did express that they are dropping off because now the grind is too much. They don't like grinding for blocks, so they've kind of given up. So I think overall it has probably hurt engagement, to be honest with you. But I don't know, we'll see. Maybe someday I'll have like build mode, VIP servers, creative mode.
You also mentioned, I mean, just now, you don't really have any interesting systems for like growing trees.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about this a little bit earlier, but like, is that high on a priority list, or is that still kind of like far away, similar like dynamic systems?
If I were working on this seriously, I think that would probably be relatively high on the priority list. That's probably one of the next things I would do. It's not trivial, because of technical details. Like, you have to kind of if you want to
Time.
spawn a tree, then you have to make sure multiple chunks are loaded in order to spawn it all at once. Otherwise, yeah, it's kind of a technical mess if you can plant a tree anywhere. But yeah, if I had time to implement it, I would definitely do that soon. I would also probably add more polish and onboarding to the game, and maybe add like a title screen, because I think part of the reason it's also inactive-ish is just because I'm below the critical threshold of having active people. So if just a few people were active, then it would be a lot easier for more people to be active. But I think we're below that threshold right now due to other random things like poor mobile support or bad onboarding. Like the crafting system right now is all commands in the game description, and you have to chat !craft signpost. So it's very not discoverable to a new player. I think that is probably the biggest that's probably one of the biggest bottlenecks at the moment.
How would you feel like having some kind of small tutorial, if you haven't had that in already, would help to this problem?
Sorry, what?
How would you feel having a game tutorial, such as having some UI telling you about the different features that you can do, and also listing you some beginner-friendly things you can do in the game, would help against this, to this?
If I had time, I would love to address the problem. I think specific solution, I would prefer more of a natural tutorial, like maybe you start in another world and you kind of have to build across a pit and step into a portal in order to reach the main world. Something where it's like not UI heavy. I always like tutorials where you are just naturally in a situation and you have to do an obvious thing, which teaches you.
Perhaps in Sweden a little bit, and say that kind of tutorial. I played a game just a couple of weeks ago on Roblox called Islands, I think it's called,
Mm-hmm.
which is
yeah. That's actually what I'm thinking of. They have a pretty good,
pretty much
this
kind of stuff, yeah. But I really think that what you've gotten through, and also of the later work that you put in, really sounds like you've been pushing this. So.
Yeah, I've been pushing mostly on the tech to make it interesting, and I've only pushed on making it like a production game that people actually play, as much as I've been doing that as little as possible, actually. Focusing more on the tech than the features.
Yeah.
All right. We've been going for about an hour and 18 minutes. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, let's wrap. Thank you for listening.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
That was awesome. Thank you.